investor, basically saying, I'm going to move all my chips onto the table also. A lot through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, some through the foundations of my 3 children. And my question for you is not so much about that, but let's talk about the rest of the world's billionaires. Last year, $1 billion is not enough to get on the Forbes 400 list. You were denied access. You had to have $1.3 billion. So there's, even with the meltdown, there's still 400 plus billionaires in the world. Number 1 and number 2 are, sometimes they're 2 and 3, depending on how Carlos Slim is doing that month. But Warren, Bill, Melinda are setting an example for the world. How do you feel the rest of the world's billionaires are doing at deploying and taking action?
Well, it's a sort of a small but deliberate piece of the foundation's work is actually to find a way to get around and talk to those folks, and that is happening. There was a meeting in London and then another one in New York with 3 or 4 of those kind of folks, and talking about things that they might think about doing or encouraging them, and explaining what joy Bill and Melinda, were getting out of doing these things. So there is a little salesmanship going on there, and I'd be surprised if it doesn't lead to something from someone along the line.
Those of us in the NGO community wish you Godspeed at that. I say that not even half facetiously. You see the amount of wealth sitting in the sidelines, and you see the power of the example. You see one of my heroes, Paul Farmer, in Partners in Health, is receiving great support from the Gates Foundation, and you meet a guy like Paul Farmer, and you think, oh my gosh, let's get that guy everything he needs to expand his work. So I just do hope that you are super successful at that, because that will be, as much as Gates and Buffett will leave an incredible footprint on the world. I feel like if numbers 3 through 400 do the same thing, that's going to probably be 100-fold magnification. So
good for you, John. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, great. So at that point, I have to pause and once again let people know that they're listening to the Commonwealth Club of California radio program. We're talking with Bill Gates Sr., father of Bill Gates. He's here talking about his book about the importance of showing up for life. I'm John Wood, the founder of Room to Read, and I have the honor of asking Mr. Gates another half hour of questions. So I hope you're ready for our second half hour.
Since we've just had an interruption, I want to do something.
You're going to seize control?
Kind of going upstream here. No, I would like you to take a minute and a half and tell the people here what you do.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, a number of our supporters are in the audience also. So
you brought a claque. That's great.
Yeah. We wanted to give you an absolute full house. We felt you deserve nothing more than a standing room only event here in San Francisco. So I, full disclosure, worked for Microsoft from 1991 until 1999. My offer letter was signed by your daughter-in-law, Melinda, and I often tell Melinda that without Melinda French, now Melinda French Gates, there would be no John Wood accepting stock options as his currency, which I was like, what the heck are these things? I don't really understand them. And without that, there would have been no risk-taking when I started Room to Read. So since you're giving me that opportunity, I'll just tell you briefly what we do. We are dedicated to the idea that education is ultimately one of the best tickets out of poverty. We are trying to reach out to the poorest countries in the world, be it Zambia, South Africa, Cambodia, Nepal, Vietnam, Laos, places like that where they're caught in a trap. I remember when I took a long break from Microsoft in 1998 to go backpacking through Nepal, a teacher said to me, he showed me his empty library, 500 students, no books. Of course, Nepal has an illiteracy rate of 70%. And he said a sentence that would, for me, change my adult life forever. He said, we are too poor to afford education, but until we have education, we'll always be poor. And that, I think, encapsulates the catch-22 for the developing world so well. And a lot of development experts say, why don't people get out of poverty? Well, if you don't get educated, there probably isn't much of a chance. In education, I think all of us in this room and all of us listening on the radio can think of a parent, a grandparent, or a great-grandparent who broke the cycle of poverty. And almost always is a story that involves education. So my goal was to take my great good fortune from Microsoft, and I didn't have enough that I could endow anything, but I did have enough that I could take a risk and work for free for a few years, and I started this group, Room to Read. And we've now opened 765 schools across the developing world using parental labor, connecting them with investors from the developed world. Those schools have 210,000 kids attending them, and we've opened 7,048 libraries, all multilingual, 5.6 million books, serving 3.1 million kids across 9 countries. So.
That's great, John. Thank you.
No, thank you. It means the world to me that you know about our work, and there's a lot of great people involved. A question from the audience. John, please talk about yourself some more. Oh, no, sorry. John, what do you want from Bill Gates for Father's Day? No. Oh boy, this interview should come with a 2-drink minimum, shouldn't it? The question from the audience is, what kind of world do you hope for your grandchildren and their grandchildren?
Well, I'd like it to be a world like the one we're in the sense that I'd like it to be a world where at least my belief about this world that we're living in now is a world in which mankind has ambitions, has a sense of purpose, and is modestly organized to make progress, to have things change and improve. I hope particularly that there isn't some astronomical or biological event which takes the world away from our progeny. But assuming that somehow we manage to get control of the business of keeping our earth whole and livable, that the world, the society in which my children and grandchildren grow up is one in which people are continuing to think in terms of the way to make it better. And I say that without the slightest naivety about just how tough that is. You know, look around today at the problems we have, and you wonder, wow, how do we ever get out of this? But I have a very clear recollection of a time in my life in the 40s when it was just assumed that we were going to have a war with Russia. And that was just one of the things, not a question of if, but just when are World War III going to break out. And that never happened, and nothing close to that ever happened. It was just the world didn't degrade into something like that. At the same time, we had a civil rights problem in the 40s and 50s, and we have largely, I'm not going to make any mistake about saying that we've disposed of that problem, but we have largely solved that problem. And it's a stunning thing. I don't know whether we can talk in terms of only 50 years. 50 years is an awfully long time, but that was a major thing we did, and it was a function of public will. The people in this country, by and large, decided that that changing the rules and changing the way we acted in that particular subject was something that should happen, that it was the right thing to do. So I think of the world, I think of those things as characterizing the world, and my wish is, I'm being redundant now, that the world continue in that mode for my progeny.
I still remember reading in the first time I read through your book, and I've now read it a couple of times to prepare, but you talk about just your desire for a just world, and how you said that a lot of people love the law and they think of the law as a bunch of statute books, but that you think of the law as fundamentally being the thing that allows the world to be just.
Absolutely.
Question from the audience is that there's a lot of suffering in the world that we can't alleviate, and it's easy to get bogged down in being sad about that. How do you manage yourself to stay not only focused, but also as positive and optimistic as you are?
Well, That's it's just natural